Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, the Hawks yesterday took on the Heat, and those pesky little Hawks, just when you're ready to give up on them, nobody gave them a chance. I think 17 out of 17 ESPN insiders or experts picked the Heat. And listen, I'm not going to blame them. I picked the Heat. I didn't think they had much of a chance in this one. Miami's a team that's dominated, particularly in Miami. They've won, I think, 7 in a row going into last night. But the Hawks dominated last night from start to finish. They were the better team. They were the more physical team. They out-rebounded Miami, I think 61-39. They had like 26 offensive rebounds. Clint Capella was abusing them on the boards. Okongwu did the same. They wanted it more. And it was one of the best performances of the entire season, and they did it when it mattered most. So what excited you most about last night, Alex? Obviously getting into the playoffs, but just what excited you? Because it's a good feeling. It's something the Hawks fans haven't really had much this entire season.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy to say that was the best game of the season. I probably watched 85% of the game. So granted, I didn't watch every single one, but I watched enough to know that was not the same Hawks team that we saw throughout the regular season. And what excited me most was physicality. Like you said, this Heat team is a team that has bullied the Hawks dating back more than just last year's playoffs. This has been a reoccurring theme. And with Trae Young as your point guard, you're susceptible to getting bullied. And they came out, they threw the first punch, they took a punch and kept punching. It was not the same Hawks team that we've been watching all season. Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Clint Capella, John Collins were menaces on the boards. Onyeka Okongwu made Bam look small. I mean, Onyeka is huge. I think what excited me most is that I equated it last night actually to a buddy of mine. When LSU got into the SEC championship, nobody from Louisiana thought that they were going to upset the Georgia Bulldogs, and very few Hawks fans probably think that we're going to upset the Celtics. This is more of a celebration of what's to come. Quin Snyder era is here, and we need this momentum to keep building into the next season, into the offseason, into the next season. I think what excited me most was the physicality. I mean, this is not something we've seen from the Hawks maybe since that 2021 conference finals run when we were actually playing defense.
Yeah, Quin Snyder, I think you have to give huge props to, man. I mean, when you talk about getting coached around, Eric Spoelstra coached around Nate McMillan. And I think that was something that Hawks fans were really frustrated about. And we talked about how, I talked about several times, how we're not going to see a lot of big progression this season when he took over midseason. But in a game like this, I think this was a moment, I said it before the game in an article, that Quin Snyder, I'm very interested to see how he does, because I do think this is a moment where if we can avoid getting coached around like we have previously against the Heat, they could be a problem, because talent for talent, I don't think it was that big. I think coaching and physicality and experience was the biggest difference between those two teams last year. And I think Quin Snyder did a masterful job. I mean, you just didn't see Trae Young get bullied like he did. And maybe it was having DeJounte Murray to take some of that pressure off of him as the primary ball handler. That definitely helped. But I just think they didn't have that edge where they could just bully Trae Young, and Trae Young had to do too much. And I think Trae Young didn't have the best game of his career by any means, but he played solid. He played like a point guard should play. The ball was moving early. He was getting other people involved, and he started off a little slow shooting the ball, but he ended up with 26 points, I think 8 or 9 assists, something like that. He had a very good game, and everyone contributed. And another thing that was huge for the Hawks, which is something we haven't seen very much this season, is the bench play. This bench play with Sadiq Bey has gotten better as the season has progressed. And yesterday, they were basically the difference in the game. The bench scored 53 points. All four guys that came off the bench scored double digits. Bey had 17. Bogdanovich had 14. Jalen Johnson came in 14 minutes, had 10 points and 7 rebounds. In 14 minutes. Okongwu defensively was dominant. 12 points on 5 of 6 shooting. I mean, that's the best bench performance we've seen from this team probably all season. The coaching was great. Trae Young did his job. The starters weren't even fantastic, but it was just an all-around team performance. And you look ahead to the Celtics, and we're going to do another video on this probably tomorrow, talking about the Celtics series and breaking it down. But if the Hawks play like that, like I'm not saying they can win the series, but they can be a handful. Like they have enough talent to be a handful, to win a couple games, to stretch this series and stuff like that. But you got to see more of that. But listen, winning on the road in the NBA, in the playoffs, in Miami is one of the toughest things to do. It can't be understated how difficult that is. And Miami is a team that, rightfully so, people thought could win this game and give the Celtics all they could handle. And the Hawks went into Miami in a very tough place to play against one of the best coaching staffs, a very experienced team, and they beat their ass. And they withstood a Kyle Lowry miracle game. Like that guy has been basically benched on that team. He had 33 points coming off the bench. Like that, not they took the Heat's, I'm not going to say best punch, but it was like they had guys who really don't typically step up, and they still couldn't really challenge the Hawks. That game was never really in doubt. They had a little stretch in the third quarter where they cut it to 5 after being down, I think 21 early in the second half. Yeah, they had that little stretch, but like you said, the Hawks kept punching. I mean, and they punched back hard, and they stretched it quickly to 13, and then the game was never in question the rest of the way. It's very encouraging all around.
Yeah, after going down 2-0, the Hawks never trailed for the rest of the game. And like you said, it was never in doubt, really. There was a couple of times where I was expecting that same Hawks team to kind of fold, and it never came. And it took, just like you said, Kyle Lowry, 33 points. That guy's a bum. That guy, they've been trying to trade that guy since they acquired him. They still lost by double digits. 33 points from Kyle Lowry, and they still lost by double-digit points. That was a whole team performance. I can't speak enough about the bench. Just like you said, they averaged 35 points during the season for a whole game. They matched that total in the first half. That's the difference. The aggression, the bench, and the rebounding. We dominated them on the boards. They were way too small for us. Way too small for us. And that's how it always should have been. I mean, this isn't the same Heat team that was just, maybe the first or second best defensive team in the league. But a lot of those same guys are still there. The bones of that team are still there. And the performance defending Jimmy Butler was, spectacular. John Collins did really good against him. DeAndre Hunter did really good against him. So, tip our caps to everybody. But most importantly, that bench was the difference.
Yeah, and it gets you excited, man. That's why I said at the very beginning, at the top of this video, they're pesky, man. And we always knew the Hawks had talent, which is why it frustrated all year that they were 41-41. We always knew they were capable of much better, and this just proves it, man. This just proves it. This is a solid Heat team. This was a Heat team that was the number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference, that nearly beat the Celtics to go to the NBA Finals. That, as I said, a lot of people were predicting to go to the Finals, and the Hawks dominated them on the road. One of the toughest things to do in sports. Winning on the road in the NBA playoffs is damn near impossible, especially when maybe you have a talent deficiency compared to the other team. And they were the better team. They were the better team by far. We'll see what the Heat do in the next playing game. I expect them to get in. But listen, as you said about momentum, they don't need to win this game win this series against the Celtics. They don't. But if they go out there and play like that, first 5, 6, 7 games, whatever it is, they make it a competitive series. You have momentum going into the offseason. You have a reason to believe this team can be better if you make the proper moves. Because I still think, unless the Hawks make a miracle playoff run, there are going to be big personnel decisions. I don't think it's going to be Trae Young, as people have talked about. But you get some momentum. You figure out what you like. You figure out what you don't like. You make the few tweaks. You have the star power. And one thing I will say that the Hawks never had, and I said this before the game with the Heat, if you got Trae Young, if you have a superstar that is capable of going off at any moment, and DeJounte Murray is a damn near superstar too. So you got 2 of them. You can win games in the playoffs strictly on those guys' backs. That's what teams of the past, the Hawks could win 50 games in the regular season. They can win 60 games in the regular season. They didn't have that superstar come playoff time when they faced elite teams and other superstars that could carry the team, which is why you saw them get swept or lose 4-2 or whatever it was. They have that now. So even as a 7 seed that has been just as average as possible, they have more of a chance of going deeper in the playoffs than any of those teams that won 50 or 60 games. So as I said last night, who cares how you got in? Let's play basketball. Maybe Trae Young pulls off some miracles. Who knows? The Celtics are probably the worst matchup outside. Like the Heat and Celtics would probably be the 2 teams that I would say those are some bad matchups with the Hawks. But I said it about the Heat. They killed the Heat. Who knows what they can do against the Celtics?
Yeah, there's really only two teams that could come out of the East, and that's Milwaukee and the
I think the
Boston.
76ers could.
I'm not a fan of the 76ers, and granted, if you had to push it to three, it would be those three. So this is not a good matchup for the Hawks. But it doesn't matter. Just like you said, we're celebrating that game and what this team can be. Not what this team currently is, but what this team can be under the leadership of Quin Snyder. Coaching matters. Coaching matters.
Yeah.
Superstars, they matter. Maybe even more, probably more, but coaching matters too. Tip our hat, the bench, the bigs. Best game of the season by far from the bigs. And tip our hats to Quin Snyder. He is a difference maker.
Yeah, I think you saw that last night. And, tomorrow we'll get into a video and we'll break down the Celtics matchups. But, hey, it's encouraging to see. It gives you a little bit of hope about the future. I mean, I was really down on this franchise, but it gives you a little hope. We'll see what happens in this series. We'll see what happens this offseason. But like you said, I mean, yeah, the Hawks aren't making the NBA Finals. They're not winning the NBA Finals. But this is about building momentum into the offseason, which is going to be a critical one for Atlanta. So let's hope they can perform well against the Celtics.